Good evening, good evening, good evening. Greetings, 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 everyone. This is Chief Kalanago Flying Eagle. Hope everybody is having an amazing day. You know me, every day it's a beautiful day, man. And it's a beautiful time to be alive. Okay. Let me see. Let me make first of all, let me just make sure I'm good on Facebook. Hold on for a second. Greetings, everyone. This is Chief Kalanago Flying Eagle. All right, Facebook is good. I gotta check audio on YouTube. And we will get into this lesson, okay? While I give you guys some time to log in. Give me 1 second, please. Give me 1 second. What's up? What's up out there, family? What's going on? How y'all doing? How is everybody doing? How is everybody doing? Hope everybody's doing good. All right. Hope everybody's doing good. First things first, guys, you already know we don't sell nobody. We don't send nobody to hell. All right. Straight vibes of high energy greetings. All right. We don't sell people to hell. We don't do the hellos. We don't do the be less you. We don't do none of that. All right. We're gonna say hi. We're gonna say greetings. High vibrations. All right. No low frequency words when we address each other in greetings. Okay. So let's keep that in mind. First things first, I want to acknowledge the great spirit, universal intelligence, universal source, the great I am, what we often call God. Okay. Definitely want to honor my ancestors, thanking them for always guiding and protecting me. Earlier today, while I was taking my nap, I had a conversation with my ancestors, and I mean they talk to me. It's kind of weird. When I say weird, for people to kind of like know what I'm talking about, but it's I just want you to know it's real. Okay, it's real. So it's a beautiful thing. All right, to be able to talk to the people who came before you and they're not even here in the flesh. Okay, that's just, to me, that's just amazing. Okay, but I definitely want to honor them and thank them. I know that any weapons formed against me shall not prosper. I know that because my ancestors are protecting me and they're very protective of me. All right, I know that. And I like to put this out there. Anyone who tries to or make an attempt, to hurt me intentionally, me personally, I don't forgive. Okay, I don't forgive such, immoral acts. Okay, if you're gonna sit around and plan to hurt somebody, that means that you have to deal with the karma. And I'm not gonna forgive anybody, to prevent them from dealing with the karma. That's not how the universe works. All right, I'm a man of nature, so I subscribe to having the universe give you that karma back 10 times fold. So with that being said, let's get into a little lesson. Of course, all this information is always for educational purposes. All right, tonight or this evening, we're going to talk about three Americans you may not have heard of or know of, but I'm going to talk about their story just a little bit. I put all the information of the link in the description. And the reason why I'm doing those, videos like that, I'll tell you why, is because, we are being undermined, okay? And we are not being taught as to who we are as a people of this land. You feel me? And we are constantly bombarded with the false narrative of coming here on slave ships. All right. So I like to tell our story, but then at the same time point out the dates. Okay. So then you'll look into your own research and realize, hold up, if these people, they were doing such and such and such and such a date, then how in heaven's name could they have been slaves? So that's part of the education. All right. Deprogramming the mind with all the false information that we're being taught. Okay. So I might do two live this evening or tonight. So I'm going to do this first, get it out the way. I'm not going to prolong it. And then I'm going to do a little something on Nas X and speak my mind on that. Okay. So I want to say greetings to all, and let's get into this. And let me share my screen real quick. All right. So the first gentleman we're going to talk about is James Pierre Beckwourth. Okay. We're going to talk about him. If you don't know who he was, then you'll learn in this lesson. Okay. You'll learn in this lesson. So let's go. First one we're going to talk about. So we already know what Jesse Jackson. Well, Jesse Jackson didn't come up with coin us with the phrase or the name African American. Okay, African American was attested, I think, in 1969, and it was created from the Teachers Association. All right, African American Teachers Association, but it was created by the Colonization Society, and Jesse Jackson was a part of the African American Teachers Association. One of the sponsors was the Colonization Society. So as you could see, all those things were strategically planned. Like I always tell you, there's no coincidence why all these different titles and identities were given to us. All right. So they say that, James Pierson Beckwourth was an African American, but let's do a little reading about him. Okay. So we're looking at a period of somewhere around 1805 to 1866. All right. James Pierson Beckwourth, African American mountain man, fur trader, explorer. Okay. And of course, this is a picture of him. And where? That was in St. Louis, Missouri, the Rocky Mountains, and Denver, Colorado. Why important? Beckwourth was an African American mountain man, fur trader, and explorer, but he was indigenous. Okay, so let's read about that biography. James Beckwourth was born into slavery, Virginia, 1805. Now remember, because you're born into slavery doesn't mean that you came from another continent as a slave. All right, indigenous people of this land were enslaved. All right. And also keep in mind, a lot of our families own their own land, and they got into deals with the government and became sharecroppers. Okay. So a lot of times they had to get their own families to work for them as slaves. All right. To protect them from the harsh, treatment of other plantations. All right. So a lot of families had to literally enslave their own families and make sure that was on record, because you had to have your papers. Your papers would either say Indian, your paper would either say free Negro, your paper would either say enslaved, or whatever the case may be. The point is, you had to have your papers walking around. All right. Same thing they're trying to push right now. You have to have your jab card in New York to go into certain places. So just look at, once again, history always repeat itself. There's nothing new under the sun. It's always about control in this system. The United States is not a nation. It's not a country. It's a corporation. It's business. Okay. So he was born into slavery. All right. In 1805, he moved to St. Louis with his father. In St. Louis, Beckwourth learned to be a blacksmith. In 1822, he decided to head west. So Beckwourth joined an expedition headed for the lead mines. In 1824, Beckwourth joined another expedition to explore the Rocky Mountains. Now, if you're a slave, okay, how you're able to do all that from your own free will? And that's why I tell people, when you read with understanding. Okay, read with understanding. Don't just let people tell you things. Okay, do your own research and read with understanding, not understanding, but understanding. It has to make sense within. Let it resonate with your spirit. Always question what these people are telling us. As a matter of fact, question what I'm telling you or teaching you, because I want you to get into the habit of doing your own research. Okay. So Beckwourth worked with the Rocky Mountain Fur Company and was an Indian fighter. Okay. He was well known for telling Lore about his adventures. And Lore, okay, Lore, Lore, is pretty much lore that was passed down through tradition, oral oral history, okay? Oral law and tradition. And then that was turned into LAW, which is the written law. But the spoken law is LORE, just so you know. All right. They say he was an Indian fighter. So fur traders, if you don't know, I'm certainly sure the name speaks for itself. But they were trappers. Some of them were trappers, especially the French trappers in Canada. Okay, and they used to marry, indigenous women. All right, to have any ties or rights to the land. So the same thing was happening here in the United States and all over the Americas. Now, this gentleman, I'm telling you his story because he was still an American, a mix American Indian, but we'll talk about that. All right. But he was also an Indian fighter. All right. Even if we talk about our ancestors, we have to talk about those that joined, okay, the colonizers and fought against our people as well. Okay. And a lot of our people joined different, whether it was the French, the Dutch, the British, whatever the case may be. Some of them got caught in the middle and they had to choose certain sides to fight. Okay. Because you would have the British telling one tribe, well, hey, listen, this tribe is talking about you. And they said this. Now, without going to the tribe and saying, hey, did you really say this? They didn't do that. All of a sudden, they just decided that we are enemies because of what the British said or the French said. So just want you to know a lot of that was going on back then. All right. He was well known for telling law about his adventures. In 1828, Beckford claimed he was captured by Crow Indians while trapping. According to Beckwourth, they thought he was the lost son of a Crow chief. Okay, now let me ask you a question. And now they say that he was always telling stories that couldn't be verified. But based on what we are reading, if I go into or I got into a situation with the Crow Indians, right, while I was trapping, and I told them, now look at this man. You could clearly see that this man is a so-called Negro, right? How am I able to go into the Crow Nation, whether I was captured or whatever the case may be? How am I able to tell them I'm the lost son of a Crow chief and they believe me? But yet still, supposedly, these Indians were pure people or so-called looking native people as you see today. So to me, it just doesn't make sense, right? And again, reading with understanding, how can a so-called Negro walk into, another tribe or whatever the case may be, where they have natives that say we are not Indians, all right, but they are pale, and you say, I'm the lost son of a Crow chief, and they believe you. I don't know. Something ain't adding up to me, but you know what? Let me just read some more. Okay. Let's see, hold up for a second. Let me just go back here. He was well known for telling law. All right, I already read that. Okay. According to Beckwourth, they thought he was the lost son of a Crow chief. So the Crow allowed him into the nation. Beckwourth married the daughter of a chief. For the next 6 to 8 years, Beckwourth lived with a Crow band. He rose in their society to the level of a war chief. Now, once again, that's a Negro doing that, but how is it possible? Beckwourth participated in raids by the Crow. The raids were usually against their enemy, the Blackfoot. All right. Once again, we did have internal battles. Okay. And that pretty much was flamed, all right, by when the colonizers came, because they did what was called divide and conquer. Like I said earlier, they would go to one tribe or one clan and say, hey, you know what? This clan, I know y'all had a little disagreement, but now they're trying to join with the Dutch and they want to fight you, all these different things. Hold on for a second. I just got kicked off of Facebook. Let me just make sure I'm good here. Okay, so it was said that the Crow, they had beef with the Blackfoot. Okay, Beckwourth is credited with discovering Beckwourth Pass in 1850. This is low elevation pass. It goes through the Sierra Nevada mountains. In 1851, he improved the Beckwourth Trail. This was originally a Native American path through the mountains. The trail allowed people to travel more quickly and safely. In 1859, Beckwourth settled in Denver, Colorado. He became a storekeeper. Beckwourth was also worked as an Indian agent. In 1864, Beckwourth was retired as a scout for a military campaign against the Cheyenne and Arapaho. All right, this dude was really going against the Indians, but I'll tell you that. He also was scout at the Fort Laramie and Fort Phil Kearny in 1866. Beckwourth died in Crow Village near the Bighorn River. He was the only African American in the West to record his life story. His book, The Life and Adventure of James P. Beckwourth, was published in 1856. All right. I just wanted to give you guys a little history on that, more so to kind of connect the dots and let you know what was happening with the divide and conquer. Okay, having tribes go up against each other and having, indigenous people that they call Negro, African American. Okay, because in 1856, all right, when he was born in 1805, there was no such thing as African American. Okay, there was no such thing as African American. So once again, at that time, they might have called him a Negro or something. All right, but he definitely was indigenous. Okay, I put that link in the description as well, just so y'all know. All right, let us go to the next one. The next individual we're going to talk about is Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable. All right. That gentleman, he was the first settler in Chicago. And supposedly he was the one who actually named Chicago, or he kept the name from the original name. And I'll tell you what the original name of Chicago was. Okay. And he left it that way. He just gave it a different variation. So we're going to read a little bit about him. Okay. All right. And we're going to look at two different articles to kind of just put the pieces together. All right. Because some of these articles, they give some information and they don't give other information. So I had to make sure we cross-reference two different articles. All right. So Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable. Jean-Baptiste Point du Sable, also spelled Point de Sable, Point ou Sable, Point Sable, Point du Sable, before 1750. Okay. August 28, 1818, is regarded as the first permanent non-indigenous settler of what would later become Chicago, Illinois, and is recognized as the founder of Chicago. Now, they say non-indigenous settler. All right. Well, I'm going to prove to you he was indigenous. All right. So let us read. A school museum, harbor, park, bridge, and road have been named in his honor. The site where he settled near the mouth of the Chicago River around in the 1780s is identified as the National Historic Landmark, now located at Pioneer Court. Okay, give me 1 second here. Point du Sable was African descent, but later else known of his, now pay attention to this, right? Point du Sable was of African descent. I'm gonna prove that to be incorrect. All right, but little else is known of his early life prior to the 1770s. During his career, the areas where he settled and traded around the Great Lakes and in the Illinois County change has several times among France, Britain, Spain, and the United States. Described as a handsome and well-educated, Point du Sable married a Native American woman, Kitu Waha, and they had 2 children. In 1779, during the American Revolutionary War, he was arrested by the British on suspicion of being an American patriot sympathizer. Okay. In the early 1780s, he worked for the British Lieutenant Governor of Michilimackinac on an estate at what is now the city of St. Clair, Michigan, north of Detroit. Point du Sable is first recorded as living at the mouth of the Chicago River in a Trader's Journal of early 1790. By then, he had established an extensive and prosperous trading settlement in what later became the city of Chicago. He sold his river property in 1800 and moved to Port of St. Charles, where he was licensed to run a ferry across the Missouri River. Now, family, we are talking about this gentleman was born, okay, in 1770, all right? Now, we're talking about slavery was still booming, all right? But yet still, he's able to be making all these moves, all these big moves, all right? Having a waterfront property, a riverfront property, okay, in Chicago, all right? Once again, like I said, let's just, this is called, how do I call it? There's a term that I use. When it comes to me, I'll let you know, okay? But just to let you know, when you read sometimes, okay, you just don't believe everything that you read, okay? Question things, all right? Point du Sable's successful role in the developing the Chicago River settlement was little recognized until the mid-20th century. Biography, all right? There are no records of Point du Sable's life prior to 1770s, but again, I'm gonna prove otherwise. Okay, though it is known from source during his life that he was of African descent, his birth date, place of birth, and parents are unknown. Like I said, I'm gonna prove otherwise. Right? Juliet Kinsey, another early pioneer of Chicago, never met Point du Sable, but said her 1856 memoir that he was a native of Santo Domingo, the island of Hispaniola. Oh, so how come she knew that? Because what they're not telling you is that his mother was Haitian. Okay? But of course, they're going to call her a slave. I keep telling y'all, man, this is not a game, man. Know what happened to our people, family. Okay? The paper genocide is real. This became generally accepted as his birthplace. Historian Milo Milton Quaife regarded Kinsey's account of Port du Sable as largely fictitious and wholly unauthenticated, later putting forward to theory that he was of African and French Canadian origin. A historical novel published in 1953 helped to publicize the claim that Point du Sable was born in 1745 in Saint Mark in Saint Dominique. All right, which Saint Dominique was Hispaniola. Okay, and Hispaniola was the two countries of Haiti and Dominican Republic put together. It was one landmass. Okay, now the entire island of Hispaniola or Saint Dominique, all right, were Negro de Terra. In other words, the island was populated with people that were of the Negroid stock. Okay. And then when the Spaniards came in, they brought in pale Spaniards to mix in with the Haitians, which was the Arawaks and Taínos. And what they did was they separated the island and put the mulattoes, the lighter ones, on the Dominican Republic side. And then they separated the islands. And now they had the Dominican Republics fighting against their mothers, all right? And now, because of what Haiti did, Haiti is literally public enemy number one, okay? So I'm giving you a little bit of history about what Haiti did for the entire Americas, okay? Because when everybody was going through the enslavement, Haiti was the first country that stood up for the entire Americas, okay? If he was born outside continental North America, There are competing accounts to whether he entered a trader from the north through French Canada or from the south through the French Louisiana. Okay. Now remember, like I told y'all once again, Louisiana and the Haitians, a lot of them are blood related. Okay. They are blood related. That's why you see a lot of the culture is so similar in nature. All right. Point du Sable married a Potawatomi woman named Kitty Hawa, Christianized to Catherine on the 27th of October 1788 in a Catholic ceremony in Cahokia in Illinois, in the Illinois County, a long-time French colonial settlement on the east side of the Mississippi River. Once again, if you were to see this or hear this name today, okay, Kitty Hawa, okay, you would say that's ghetto. But I just want you to know all these names are indigenous names. Names like Shaniqua, okay, even the persona that Lawrence Martin took in Martin. What's his name? What was the name? What was that name? The woman he was playing, Shaniqua. What was her name? I forgot. If anybody could tell me, in Martin, you know, the neighbor, Shaniqua. No, it wasn't Shaniqua. Man, I forgot. Anyway, but just to let you know, names such as these, okay, they are not ghetto names. What they're not telling you is they are American Indian names. All right, but ghetto is what they are telling you because they don't want you to know. All right. So yeah, Shenane. Thank you. I appreciate that, Brother Ty. All right, Shenane. That's an indigenous name. It is not a ghetto name. Okay, just so y'all know. All right. Now, it is likely that this couple was married earlier in the 1770s in a Native American tradition. They had a son named Jean and a daughter named Suzanne. Point du Sable supported his family as a frontier trader and settler during the period of the Great Upheaval for the former southern dependencies of French Canada and in the Illinois country, where the regions changed hands several times over the course of half a century. Now, keep that in mind. Every so-called state was considered its own country. All right. Even right now, they may not tell you, they call it a state, but each of them is literally their own country with their own constitution. All right. Just wanted to point that out. In a footnote to a poem titled Speech to the Western Indians, Arent de Pasteur, or Pasteur, British commandant from 1774 to 1779 at Fort Michilimackinac, a former French fort in what was then the British province of Quebec, noting that Baptiste Point de Sable was a handsome Negro, well educated and settled in Chicago. When he published his poem in 1813, de Pasteur presented it as a speech that he had made at the village of Abracocroche. I don't know how to pronounce that, but I apologize. Now Harbor Springs in Michigan on 4th July 1779. This footnote has led many scholars to assume that Point du Sable had settled in Chicago by 1779. But letters written by the other traders in the late 1770s suggest that Point du Sable was at this time settled at the mouth of the Trail Creek, Rivera de Chenim, at what is now Michigan City, Indiana. All right. Now, I'm not going to read all of that. I just wanted to kind of, because I put the rest of that in the link for you. I'm going to go to another article that talks a little bit about him and a little more background on how Chicago was named. But I just want you to know he was the one that was the first so-called settler in what is now called Chicago. And I'm going to tell you what the original name of Chicago was and how it came about. But he was the first settler, and indeed he was indigenous. Okay, his mother was Haitian, was an Arawak Taino woman. All right, so let us go to the next article. Okay. And all that information, like I said, I put that in the link for you guys, so you could go ahead and read the entire article, okay? Maybe it could help you do some more research if you're interested. All right, let's go to the next one, which is pretty much talking about him as well, but from another article. All right. All right, let's scroll down. All righty, cool. So there are a few questions. Well, pretty much they're asking questions and they're giving the answers, right? When did DuSable settle in Chicago? That was 1779. When was Chicago founded? In 1833. So I'm giving you guys a little bit of history of Chicago, okay? Who was the first permanent resident of Chicago? What did he do for a living? Chicago's first permanent non-indigenous resident, in other words, non-indigenous to Chicago, all right, was a trader named Jean-Baptiste Point DuSable, once again, a free black man from Haiti. That's why he was able to make these moves. Okay. And the same thing that was done in the United States, free Negroes in all the islands, even in Dominica. Okay. They had free Negroes. Okay. A free black man from Haiti whose father was a French sailor and whose mother was an African American slave. He came here in 1770 via the Mississippi River from New Orleans and his Native American wife and their home stood. Okay, now once again, he was a free Negro, right? Now keep in mind, back in the days, if the mother was a slave, right, then they would take up the title of the mother. So how come he wasn't a slave? Why was he a free Negro? His mother was an Arawak woman, and his father was a Frenchman who had to marry his mother so that he could literally become an American. All right? So let's put this in perspective. That's why when you're reading these things, you have to look at the date, what different terms meant at that time, and you have to know the history for it to make sense. Because anytime you just look at it, there was just slaves. Nah, that's not how it works. All right, that's what they want you to think in school. All right, where was Jean-Baptiste DuSable born? Saint Mark, Haiti. All right, Saint Dominique at that time. That's what it was called because Dominican Republic wasn't established just yet. Why did Jean-Baptiste DuSable leave Chicago? Point DuSable left Chicago in the 1800s. He sold his property to Jean Lalime, a trader from Quebec, and moved to the Missouri River Valley, at the time part of the Spanish Louisiana. The reason for his departure is unknown. By 1804, John Kinsey, who also settled in Chicago, had bought the former DuSable house. All right. The Haitian discovered Chicago. Jean-Baptiste Point DuSable, born 1750, around that time, circa. Okay. Saint Mark, Saint Dominique, now Haiti, died August 28th, 1818, St. Charles, Missouri, USA. Black pioneer trader and founder of the settlement that later became the city of Chicago. All right. So he was the one who kind of like supposedly discovered Chicago. Of course, there were indigenous people there. All right. But he was the first settler. All right. Keep that in mind. All right. Was there slavery in Illinois? For a free state, Illinois had a long tradition of slavery. The first black slaves were brought to the Americas bottom area by the French in 1717. Some descendants of those first slaves were still in servitude at the time of the statehood in 1818. Okay. And here's something that you also have to learn. All right. Anytime you're considered black was synonymous with slave. All right. Although at that time they had a lot of so-called, if white was also synonymous with slave, then they would have been called slaves as well. But the difference is, once you are so-called black, automatically you are a slave. And once you are considered to be white, then you are indentured servant. So you see how they broke it down? But a lot of these people were indentured servants and not slaves. All right? They became slaves by, again, the title of being called black. Now, who first settled Chicago? We already know that. Jean-Baptiste Pondu-Sabel. Is Chicago built on a swamp? In the middle of the 19th century, Chicago was not the shining modern metropolis it is today. The city was only 4 feet above Lake Michigan at most, built on a swamp. Pools of standing water formed all over the city. Is Chicago stinking? In fact, Chicago is stinking and has sunk about 4 inches in the last century. And while that may not seem like a lot, it could have a big impact on not just the region, but on individual homeowners too. Does the Chicago River freeze? Does the Chicago River completely freeze during the winter? The Chicago River doesn't completely freeze. If the surface of the main stem in downtown Chicago freezes, the city operates an ice breaker to free up the waterway for safety purposes. The Chicago mean stinky onion. Chicago is named after a wild and smelly onion, for those of you who didn't know, of which could be any of these varieties. From left, northern onion, wild leek, ramp, and field garlic. Chicago is named after a wild and smelly onion, from which could be any of these varieties from left, northern onion, wild leek, ramp, and field garlic. All right. What was Chicago called before it was named Chicago? It was called Chicago. All right. But that word came from another source. What does Chicago stand for? The most accepted Chicago meaning is a word that comes from what? An Algonquin language, which means Chicago. So that was the original indigenous name of Chicago, meaning striped skunk or onion. All right. According to the early explorers, the lakes and streams around Chicago were full of wild onions, leeks, and ramps. And in the Algonquin word, Chicago, that was the original name. However, when Du came into Chicago, all right, he came in as a settler and mingled with the indigenous people, and they told him the name, and he just gave it a different variation, but kept the same name for Chicago. Okay? Just so y'all know. Is Chicago a French word? The name Chicago is derived from the French rendering of the indigenous Miami, Illinois word Chicago for a wild relative of the onion. It is known to botanist as Aluian trichocum and known more commonly as ramps. The first known reference to the site of the current city of Chicago, Chicago, was by Robert Dare. Okay. How did old Chicago get its name? We already said that. What is Chicago called? Windy City. Chicago has been called the Windy City, the term being used metaphorically to make out that Chicagoans were braggarts. An explanation for Chicago being a naturally breezy area is that it is on the shores of Lake Michigan. Chicago had long built itself as an ideal summer resort because of its cool lake breeze. Okay, so I just want to give you guys a little history on this gentleman. All right, a little history about Chicago, how it got its name, and what was the original name of Chicago. All right. We are going to go to one more. Give me 1 second. Let me close this out. All right. Where we at? Where we at? Where we at? Let me see it, Lenti. All right, so we're gonna read a little bit about the old Chisholm Trail, just a little bit about that, so you know what that is, okay? And then I will conclude the live, and then I'll do another one going into I don't normally get involved with that whole, you know, the gossip and the distraction, but I feel a need to talk about that just a little bit. I'm not gonna make it too long, but I will talk about that in a few, okay? So now we're going to talk about the old Chisholm Trail, okay? As the route celebrates its 150th anniversary, all right? And editor Bob Welsh looks at some of the men and circumstances who shaped this most famous of cattle trails. The Chisholm Trail looms large in the pantheon of cowboy history. The images evoked from those two words are the heart and soul of American cowboy lore. Okay? Longham cattle, wild stampedes, perilous river crossings, clashes with native cultures, and ultimately wild celebrations in some dusty trail to Minnie's cow town. As with most legends, historians and purists are quick to point out inaccuracies in how the current cultures interprets and perceives what happened during those frontier times. In the minds of most fans of the West, the Chisholm Trail is the route that the old-time cattle drives took in the years after the Civil War. While that's not wrong, there's so much more to the story. In recognition of the sequencennial of the first trail, herds to be driven from Texas to Kansas and shipped by rail eastward, we present a brief sketch of the cattle drive era, a time that has come to define and inspire rather the American cowboy. And you may ask, well, Chief, why are you reading about cowboy? Because, well, Chisholm, okay, the gentleman the trail was named after, he was mixed, okay? He was half indigenous and he was half European, okay? Normally, the phrase Chisholm Trail has come to be interpreted by today's culture as any herd of cattle driven across the prairie. In reality, the Chisholm Trail was established as a freight trade route from Kansas to Texas through the Indian Territory by trades Jesse Chisholm and James R. Meade during the Civil War. Chisholm was the kind of rare breed that only the American West can produce. His father was of Scottish descent and his mother was Cherokee. His mother was a melanated woman. Okay? Just so y'all know, his mother was a melanated woman. And another reason why I'm again showing you guys this, to show you that when you see, hold on for a second, a lot of these names and these people that came here that mixed with our people, those names didn't necessarily come from slave masters, okay? Just so y'all know. They also came from indentured servants, all right? And people intermarried, people fell in love. It happened, okay? So his father was what did I say? Scottish? I think that's what I said. Oh, yeah, Scottish. All right. And his mother was Cherokee. He was raised primarily by his mother in and around Arkansas. And every time I see that, I'm saying Arkansas, right? But I keep remembering that it's Arkansas and the Indian Territory, and became fluent in the dialects of many of the area's Native American tribes. He naturally fell into the trading business and established several trading posts to service the displaced tribes of the West. Sam Houston and others called on Chisholm prior to the Civil War. During the Civil War, Chisholm lived in Wichita, Kansas, and served both sides as a trader and interpreter. Though the famous route was named for him, he never had the chance to enjoy the notoriety. Why? There's always that. They never give us the credit. I'm telling you. All right. He died in 1867, and the first year the herds began to follow his route. All right. From that point in history forward, it's easy to understand why every cattle trail has come to be known as the Chisholm Trail. By the legend, the first herd to make the trip from Texas to Kansas was bossed by Thornton Chisholm. It's unclear if he and Jesse were related. Meanwhile, John Chisholm was making a name for himself as one of the first cowmen to trail cattle from South and East Texas to West Texas and New Mexico. Later, he became a supporting character in the Lincoln County War and had dealings with Billy the Kid. In fact, John Wayne stars in a 1970 feature film called Chisholm as the title character. I bet you they didn't tell you that his mother was a so-called Black Cherokee woman. All right. The final, I'm gonna read just one more paragraph, and then, like I said, the link is there. You guys can read the rest. The final and perhaps the most influential reason that popular culture refers to all cattle drivers as going up the Chisholm Trail is the song born of those drivers called the Old Chisholm Trail. The lyrics date to the 1870s and the tune in the 1600s. Gene Autry, Bing Crosby, Randy Travis, and Michael Martin Murphy have all lent their vocal stylings to the tune. By far the most popular song chronicling the trail drivers or the trail drives. The Chisholm Trail moniker for all trails stuck. In truth, there were four main trails: the Shawnee, the Chisholm, the Western, and the Goodnight, Loving, and many other minor trails of various names. All right, so guys, the link is there. You could read the rest. One of the main reasons why I wanted to share this with you is so that you know about that, okay, and let you know that he was one of the pioneers, okay, of cowboys. And a lot of times we're not credited for the roles that we played, all right, in our story and in history. Okay, they bury a lot of these stories. So I wanted you to be aware of that and bring some of that information to you guys. Okay, so I'm going to conclude this build and I'm going to end this, and I'm going to do a video or a live and talk a little bit about Nas X. I'm going to read an article and I'm going to give my opinion on that, which I'm entitled to. All right. Normally, I don't talk about things like that, but I feel that I need to say something. So I'm going to conclude this live and then I'll come back. So I hope you guys enjoyed a little bit of going down memory lane and giving you guys a little bit of our story that we find in his story. And a lot of those stories are buried. They're not told. All right. Why? Because, you know, a lot of these people, they're so-called Negroes or so-called African Americans being labeled as slaves coming here from a slave ship. You see what I'm saying? So because, you know, they accomplished so many great things, those things are being buried. But just so you know, all these people are actually indigenous Negro Americans. All right. So just wanted to kind of share that. So let me end this and I will set up another live so we could talk a little bit about this whole Nas X situation. All right. Appreciate, love you guys.